Morning, everyone. We're just going to give it a moment for everyone to log into the program this morning, and then we'll get started. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our program, Tradable Sectors and How They Impact the Long Island Economy. My name is Tony Joy. I'm the Office Manager with the HIA-LI. This morning, I'd like to start off by thanking our board members, some of which we have on our panel this morning, as well as joining us for this morning's Zoom webinar. Thank you for all that you do as far as moving our initiatives forward on a daily basis and all the support and dedication that you put into that. We'd also like to thank our program sponsors that we have for today. Without the support of our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to put on such great programming, such as the one that we have for you this morning. So the sponsors that we have are People's Alliance Federal Credit Union, Farrell Fritz, LongIsland.com, Sun Nation Solar Systems, and Suffolk County IDA. I'd like to now pass it over to Terry Alisi-Maselli, President and CEO of the HIA-LI.
So good morning, everyone. Hope you are all staying healthy. Many of you know one of our core missions here at the HIA-LI is to advocate for the Long Island Innovation Park at Hauppauge, which is formerly the Hauppauge Industrial Park. And it was about 4 years ago that we partnered with the Suffolk Industrial Development Agency, the Regional Planning Association, James Lima Planning, and the and Stony Brook, really to look at the economic output and the opportunity analysis of this park. And the results were absolutely astounding. So about 1,300 companies, 55,000 employees, all within 11 square miles, by the way. You know, one of the things about that is the output. It's about 14 billion in economic output. And one of the things that the study told us is that 58% of the industries come from what are called tradable sectors. And they're industries that bring money in from outside into Long Island and into the region. And they have several things in common. So typically they have very high employment and specialization. They certainly have substantial growth in this economy. So that is really what we'll be talking about today with these panelists, many of them, all of them actually from tradable sectors. The other thing that the study told us is that these tradable sectors are the anchor of this innovation park to really help sustain it and for its growth. So they're critical to what we're doing and the work that we are moving forward with. So I have the pleasure of introducing my favorite person, Joe Campolo. He's our board chair and he's managing partner of Campolo, Middleton, McCormack. And he is really the one leading this effort with the Long Island Innovation Park at Hauppauge. Joe?
Thanks, Terry. And I do want to say hats off to you and your team for the hard work and the fighting you've been doing to push everything forward these last 6 months. And I can't believe it's 6 months, but it's now 6 months that we've been sort of stuck in the mud, and you guys have done a really terrific job. And I'm very, very proud. Always proud to wear my HIA hat, but more proud now than ever. And to my fellow board members, Jim and Ann, I say thanks always for your guys' support. And Mark, it's a pleasure to meet you. I mentioned offline that you happen to run the company that produces my very favorite cookies, so that's a very good thing. Are you muted, Mark? I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
Oh, there you go. Got some.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that I love about Long Island is I've lived here and worked here my whole life, and yet as you stumble through it, you realize the amazingly talented people and innovative businesses that are here. Sometimes I just drive around the Innovation Park or some of the other areas just to see some of the cool companies that are, that are there. And there's always so many of them and so many interesting people. But today we're very lucky to have you folks to talk with us. Um, Long Island is in a tough spot right now, and it's going to take a lot of good leadership to steer us back on track. And we got three great good leaders here today with us that are going to tell us their journey these last 6 months, what they're sort of facing, and how they're moving their respective ships forward. So, Mark, I want to just start with you in the food service industry. It's a very important industry, and as I was thinking about today's discussion, I was wondering, you guys might actually be doing well, but I'm not sure, right? Because I think food, and there's a lot of food shortage. I was watching on CNBC this morning where the Wheels Up companies are sponsoring a lot of food shortages, but the food industry seems to be having some higher demand. So why don't you tell us sort of what's been going on pre-COVID, during COVID, and how you're going to get post-COVID, and then we'll go around with that sort of discussion from there.
Well, thank you very much, Joe. It's been certainly and continues to be an interesting journey for us and for our industry. For us in particular, pre-COVID, on the topic of tradable sectors, in October of 2019, the U.S. Trade Representative announced that they were going to apply tariffs to a number of imported products, and we fell under that umbrella and got hit with a 25% import tariff. And given the importance of the aviation industry to Long Island, you may appreciate that this had to do with a suit that the World Trade Organization had been conducting over the course of 14 years between Boeing and the US and Airbus, and ultimately ruled in favor of the US, and saying that the European Union had been applying corporate welfare or subsidies to Airbus over many years and offered the US 7.5 billion in restitution. So we had nothing to do with that at all. We're a family-owned business in Scotland, yet we got hit with a 25% import tariff. So that completely changed the nature of the game. And then COVID hit, and a number of our employees in the supply chain very early in the process, in the month of March, came down with COVID. So that was sort of a hairy time for us. I was worried that we might lose people. Thankfully, all of our employees have recovered and are in good health these days. And my number one priority is to maintain the health of our workforce. So we talk a lot about it, and we try to maintain good standards in the workplace, but obviously we're also subject to how people behave outside of the workplace. So in terms of the business itself, the tariff has now been lifted for us specifically. We lobbied pretty heavily and also had help from our local representative, Congressman Zeldin, and his office in this, in getting that tariff lifted. But the business itself has had mixed results. Overall, our business is up about 10% this year, which is kind of incredible, with various customers and channels having puts and calls. So the grocery channel, like most grocery businesses, is up doing very well. Disney is a big customer. No one's going to Disney this year. Starbucks, fashion retailers like TJX Corporation, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Home Goods had to shut down their operations for 13 weeks. So it's been ups and downs. Convenience channel not doing very well. Food away from home not doing well. So we're just trying to navigate this and hoping to get to the other side.
Yeah, I sense that you probably are doing okay, because when kids go to college, they put on the freshman 15, and COVID 15 has attacked everyone, I think. So,
Yeah, I call it the COVID-19.
yeah, which is good. And so how have you guys held up? How has it been for you? Why don't you walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. So pre-COVID, to give sort of a summary there, manufacturers were basically worried about doing market analysis, business development, how do we stay vital? Supply chain impact was an issue prior to COVID. and workforce, which of course was already mentioned, but continues to be an issue. So, those were three things that I think manufacturers as a whole were dealing with. And then COVID hit, and it sort of became those same three issues on steroids with some additional concepts, of course. So employees had to learn what essential meant, right? We were a critical infrastructure industry. That phrase wasn't even really talked about prior to COVID. So there had to be sort of a redefining of who we are as a workforce, a recognition that my employees didn't get to stay home, right? They still had to come to work every day and exercise safety and good health habits. So we were fortunate that we did not miss a day of work through this whole COVID experience, which again is a whole nother surreal experience that I'm sure we will all reflect on as we move forward. But it has, again, taken on, some manufacturers actually with regard to workforce have hired people. So with bad comes some good. Manufacturers, I think, were able to look at the pool of candidates that are out there now, were able to absorb some of the folks who had lost jobs from other companies. So again, try and find a little positive in there. I think there has been some growth in employment in our individual sector, very unique, niche sector. But moving forward, I mean, we're still COVID now, contraction of the industry was already happening. And now there's even more contraction going on. There's companies that may not survive this. There's absorption. There's mergers and acquisitions that were happening prior, but now have maybe been accelerated. So that's going on and continues to go on a national level. The prime companies are having to be maybe more vertically integrated because of that. They have to look at capabilities across the supply chain. So again, I think we're going to talk a lot about COVID, but really the issues that we were facing really just became that much more profound. Another positive from it, of course, so that I mentioned briefly, is the resilience of this region. Joe, you and I talked about how wonderful this region is. I think we feel a lot of pride about this region and the park and the innovation park specifically. Companies came through. I mean, they heard that ventilators had to be manufactured. They tried to retool for that. They heard masks had to be manufactured. Companies tried to figure out how to do that. Anything that had to be made, Long Island manufacturers tried to make it. And I think that is really such an asset to this region that we should be focusing on. And I look forward to talking more about it.
Yeah, that is something I want to talk about. You know, my grandparents would always talk about how in World War II, you know, manufacturers, everybody just sort of came together to rally behind what needed to be done, and never really experienced that, right, until COVID, and watched how you guys just all sort of amazingly rallied. And I think really a big source of pride for manufacturers should be that not one single person died of COVID because they couldn't get a ventilator or other necessary equipment that was needed, right? And that's a huge, huge stat. That's a hugely tremendous stat when you think about where we were 6 months ago. Just incredibly amazing. And manufacturers just do not get recognition the way others do, but you guys are just so amazing. Really, truly amazing how quickly you guys can react.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Really hats off. Super proud.
Thank you.
So Jim, we've talked a couple of times during this whole weird process, right? And I'm curious. I can imagine that your business in residential is going absolutely gangbusters with the wave of real estate that's coming out here to Long Island. But talk about where you started and where you guys are right now, 6 months later, right?
Sure. Well, you know, real estate is a very capital intensive business, or real estate development is anyway. And, you know, as you prepared some of this and you guys sent out some questions, there was a sort of a distinction between real estate development and construction. And then I'll touch on that a little bit. But in the real estate development world, it's very, very capital intensive. And pre-COVID, you know, I like to say that we were kind of in that Goldilocks situation. It wasn't too hot yet. It wasn't too cold. And, you know, things seemed sort of be just right and moving along, with the fear of the fact that at the time we thought the Fed already had, you know, used up a lot of its bullets, and that we didn't really have a lot of fiscal tools left because of the stalemate between, you know, Congress and the Senate, and the political dislocations in Washington. So, you know, we were fearful that when something happened, when a pipe burst in the global financial system, which it's bound to do, right? We knew something would cause a pipe to burst because nobody can understand the entire plumbing of that system globally. And I remember the last time we had a panel down at the Windwatch, I was saying it was pre-COVID. I was saying it might be the virus, might be something else, but something's going to cause a burst in the financial system, and I'm not sure we have the tools left to deal with it. And I've been surprised at how well we have dealt with it from a financial markets perspective. You know, the fact that you've got a 10-year now down in the point, you know, 0.6, 0.7 range is just unbelievable. The cost of money is, you know, you can get long-term mortgages for multifamily housing now for less than 3% for 30 years. It's very, very, very inexpensive money right now, which has been great for the real estate development side, right? In theory. Problem is that governments have been shut down largely, and so we still have some virtual meetings. And you know, our innovation park has had great success with the rezoning recently, which was great, and town of Smithtown working with us. But it did slow things down. So from us on the real estate development side, we had probably 4 large projects that are a few months pushed back from where they would have been had it not been for COVID. You know, that being said, the existing stuff, the things that we're leasing up now, or the things that we own that you know, where leases are rolling over, has been a tremendous wave of demand. You know, the city, and you know, all of my adult kids moved out. They and they're not going back. And so many other people have decided that they don't want to be in the congestion of the city. And so multifamily housing, and I know single family housing, even though I don't know a lot about single family housing, I know the demand has been you know, experiencing a huge surge. In our Ronkonkoma project, you know, we are way ahead of monthly lease up projections. And I was shocked at that, especially in March and April and May, when the economy is shut down and we're still leasing units at a pace that exceeded our projections. I was shocked at that. And it's just a reflection of, you know, people's needs now are not to be in mass transit, you know, recognizing that they probably, if they have to go to the city, they don't have to do it every day anymore. And they, you know, they want to get out of the congestion. So on the multifamily demand side, it's been great. On the construction side, I'd say between delays in new projects getting started, and you know, and obviously the shutdown for a few months of non-essential construction, which included everything that didn't have at least 25% affordable housing in it. That I would say on the construction side probably set us back to just north of like 50% of the revenues that we did last year. And again, construction is not the same as real estate development or real estate asset management. But on the pure construction side, it did slow things down. And I know other companies in the construction market who focus more on, let's say, the public sector, you know, schools, universities, government buildings, that just do construction. It's been an even rougher time. You know, a lot of those budgets have been blown. A lot of the capital programs have been delayed. So construction, I think, is going to continue to bump along, but it's got some hurdles in front of it. Multifamily housing and real estate development was delayed, but I think its underpinnings are still very solid.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned the city. I had put an offer in on a place, 91st and Central Park West, that I was in love with. That didn't work out, and I was heartbroken, and wound up getting a place in West Hampton Beach instead. And now I feel like an absolute genius for having had that turn of events. You know, really, I really do. Mark and Ann, I want to talk to you guys about workforce, right? Because I think you guys, and Mark, were you deemed essential during the whole time? You guys probably were, right? I think you're muted there, though. So.
Yeah, we were, because we're part of the food industry. We were.
Yeah, that's what I was figuring. I want to talk to you guys about the workforce, because it's been a really weird time. You know, when COVID shutdown happened, you guys were essential. Your workers were there. Others were not. Others were home getting incentives to stay home. And I'm curious how managing a workforce during that time and now going forward, the sort of challenges you guys had with that. I'll start with you, Mark, and then I want to hear from you as well.
Well, there was a lot of press about how the Hispanic community in New York, in the New York metro area, was hit particularly hard during the early days of COVID. And most of our supply chain warehouse community happens to be Hispanic. So the fact that they were hit hard has little to do with the fact that they're Hispanic, but more to do with the fact that there are, many of them are first generation immigrant communities, and they live in closer proximity. They take public transportation, and maybe they're more demonstrative socially than Anglos are. At least that's been my experience in Latin America. So, getting into sort of COVID mentality and social distancing was particularly hard. So we struggled with how do we keep our workforce safe? How do we both put social distancing measures in place and here in the workplace and help train people to behave that way outside of the workplace? So thankfully today we don't have any illness, and infection rate in Suffolk County remains under 100 a day on a daily basis. So we're just watching it very closely, and as are you, we're very concerned about what will happen during cold and flu season into the winter.
Yeah, so what about the morale, though? Did you find that the workers were happy to be coming to work? I mean, I'm sure they were concerned. I'm sure they were nervous. So how did you manage through that morale issue?
Yeah, everyone was scared, and I'm sure they're still somewhat scared. So it was not easy. I mean, I don't know that we did a great job of it, frankly, but we kept in contact with people and talked to people. Our head of supply chain, head of warehouse, was sick and out of work for a long time, and we were all pretty bummed out about it. So not an easy situation.
Yeah, I can imagine that must have been rough. And folks, I want to welcome Jeff Reingold. Jeff's the Chief Operating Officer of Contract Pharmacal, and we're glad to have you as part of the discussion, Jeff. We're just talking about how managing the workforce during COVID has been, because it's certainly a unique time. And Ann, I was curious about your experiences. You guys were deemed essential and necessary, and how was that, and how do you see it? Is it changing? Is it easing up now? How is the workforce handling it?
Well, I think, again, there are so many different phases. The start was fear and unknown, obviously, right? So we were watching Cuomo speak every day and hearing, like I mentioned earlier, the new language of what's essential, what's the critical infrastructure industry. We were just getting hit with a lot of good information and trying to filter it. But honestly, as many leaders did, we were living by the hour almost on those first few days. I actually wrote everyone's name on an index card. Sounds old fashioned, right? But I laid out everyone's name on the conference table and just figured out who can work from home with my IT guy. We just separated the entire workforce into the touch labor folks who had to stay in the company versus the folks who could work remotely. Separated it that way, got the IT all set up. Then it became, trying to, again, instill that pride in what it meant to be essential, which was pretty easy to do as you started to hear about companies that were doing furloughs and layoffs and things like that, right? There was a pride about being essential with a capital E. People were happy to still have a job. They were respectful to their peers, understanding what they had to do to keep it going. In our industry, obviously the products that we're making, there's a certain pride in that, understanding that you have to keep the military and our war fighters stocked with the parts that they needed. So there was a natural pride going on, but I would be ignorant to say that there wasn't a fear and a concern. I think that some folks who had to stay at work initially had that, well, how are we going to stay healthy? How are we going to do that? Again, we're fortunate if you were to walk through our shop, everyone has their own workstation already 6 feet apart from one another. So everyone's workstations were pretty safely distanced apart. But but it was really, I wish I had kept a journal every day to chronicle the feelings and emotions of what we all went through. It was surreal also to jump on 347 and get to Hop Hog in 10 or 15 minutes, realizing that from Setauket to Hop Hog, I didn't pass one car at certain points, which was just, it's bizarre, you know, to drive 25A to 347 into Hop Hog and not pass anybody. So even that emotionally was a very surreal experience that I think my workforce was also processing. And it's very hard to explain what it was like to go to work every day with my peer group while others were at home going through their own struggles of being at home. And then of course the challenge of kids being in school. You know, I had college, high school, junior high, and elementary going on in my home at home. So I was actually happy to go to work every day, leave that with my husband at home. So of course, workforce had those challenges too, not to make light of it, but that was a whole nother challenge that I'm sure we can discuss. But the child care aspect, while also working through COVID, was something very unique that, again, I hope we remember it and learn from it.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I've kept a journal for like 20 years, and March and April and even early May, I just couldn't even find myself with the ability to write things down. I just kind of felt like I had hit in the head with a bat, and I was dazed for 6-8 weeks there. Couldn't even really get it under control to figure out what to articulate. So Jeff, I want to involve you in the discussion. You know, Contract Pharmacal is a huge occupant of the park. I've had the pleasure of touring your guys' facilities. I think you have 10 or 11 buildings, which is amazing. You guys run an amazing operation. So, Chief Operating Officer, 6 months ago, economy shuts down. What do you do, right? What do you do?
Yeah, we got hit pretty hard here. Probably saw about 15% of the workforce positive, home in some fashion, whether they were sick or caring for a sick family member. And then you had that fear as well, as kind of Ann mentioned. So some people just had this fear of coming to work. Deemed essential from the beginning. You know, we kind of jumped to action as quickly as possible. One was staying educated, obviously, with what was being shared, whether it was watching you know, on the news, what's happening, but also how they're kind of laying out the different guidelines. We quickly went to a remote for teams that could be remote, but as a manufacturer, obviously, predominant forces need to be here to get the jobs done. So we quickly improvised and changed our cleaning structures within the facilities. We quickly brought on temps to be doing temperature monitoring at every entrance. Every person had their temperature taken coming into the office, and then after lunch as well. I mean, it was tough, especially being larger. Lunch breaks became really complicated. Trying to keep people 6 feet apart, which we didn't, you know, in the beginning when we were at probably about 40% of our workforce coming in, it was manageable. And then all of a sudden, you know, come April, May, people started coming back. It actually got harder for a little bit because having so many people and trying to maintain the social distance part, actually the challenge was even more difficult. So, you know, we ended up restructuring our lunch breaks for our team members. We brought in tents outside the building so people could have more space for themselves. But it's also constantly listening to the team members in terms of, you know, where are they at? What are their feelings? Trying to make sure that not only is that pride is always there. I think the team that we have are amazing, but we want them to be comfortable. You know, we want people coming into work knowing that, yes, we are deemed essential, but they're coming to a workplace where they can be comfortable that we're doing all best efforts to make sure they maintain their safety throughout the workday. So in addition to our own cleaning staff, we brought in outside cleaning staff to do full sanitization of workspaces, common spaces, break rooms, cafeterias. We tried to make it easy. We did a lot of brown paper bag lunches for team members, so they didn't have to worry about, you know, because we have a food truck that comes. Well, that was put on hold for sure. So we tried to make it as easy as possible for the team members where, one, they felt safe, they felt comfortable, but also that kind of ease was there that they could be, comfortable going home to their families, not feeling that they were potentially getting sick.
Yeah, you guys have done a great job. I mean, Jim, you and I have, we're lucky enough where we could do most of what we needed to do from home, and our workforce could do most of what they needed to do from home. For you guys having to actually manage a day-to-day on-site workforce it's incredible. It's incredible that you guys were able to really get it done and get it done as safely as you were. I want to get personal for a minute, right? Because I think a lot of people look at folks like you and they see very successful business people, and they just think that, you're wearing a big S on your chest at all time, and you're superheroes, and nothing ever affects you and impacts you. But that's not true, right? That's not true at all. And I think it really helps people when they hear sort of, the personal process that people have gone through and what they're doing to try and help keep themselves mentally sane and safe and moving forward. So, Jim, I'll start that loaded question with you.
Yeah, it's pretty loaded. I've quite frankly never felt like anybody views me with an S on my chest, but I'm glad you think somebody does. It was very trying. We had, again, I make the distinction between development and construction. On our real estate development side, most people can work from home, and we've been shocked at how well that's gone. And we hold a lot of, Zoom team meetings to keep everybody informed of what's happening. But that productivity level has stayed pretty high. In the construction world, it was shut down for a while as non-essential. And, when it was essential for the first couple of weeks. And then they put in the criteria of a 25% affordability hurdle, which, like, for example, in our Lindenhurst job, it's 260 units. And it's 10% affordable. So there's 26 units there that are going to be affordable, which it always boggled my mind why they draw this, arbitrary percentage versus the total number of units that you're actually delivering. But that was essential for the first couple of weeks. And I remember walking the job site thinking when I first heard that it was going to be non-essential and not knowing how long that would be. Most of our employees, direct employees, have been with us. I think we had an average of 16 years before last year. We hired a bunch of young people last year. We might have dialed it back down to more like 13 years, but we have long-term employees, and we really, really value what they've brought to our company and their dedication to the company. And we also have long-term relationships with all the trade contractors that are on the site. So we know most of these people that are there very, very well. And to walk around the job site and know that at the time, we didn't know about PPP. We didn't know if we were to be shut down completely, would all of these families be without an income? And, as an entrepreneur and a person that's grown a business, I think the greatest sense of pride you ever have is watching that person grow their family, watching them get that house, watching them put their kids into college, seeing the impact of what those jobs really mean to people. And in those early days of COVID, to walk around the job site and think about what would happen to these families if we are shut down, like literally shut down, which we did get shut down. But then PPP came along and we didn't have to lay anybody off, which was great. And a huge relief. But there was a couple of weeks there at the beginning where there really was a huge fear of that. And again, I mentioned before that I thought that the federal government has done a pretty darn good job between PPP, which I thought was a brilliant program, and then of course the Fed and the stimulus packages. I hope they get another one done. I think we need it, but I think they've done a pretty good job so far with that. So when our people were allowed to go back to work, there was a huge sense of pride and relief because they had been laid off and because they didn't know what the future would. They had been laid off, but they'd been sent home and they'd been at their houses for several weeks. And, when we said, okay, the job's going to open up again, Yeah, we had all kinds of new precautions. They loved it. I mean, they loved the fact that we staggered the work shifts coming in, that they had to answer the questions, they had to get their temperature taken, that we installed the tracker on their hard hat so that would tell them if they're within 6 feet of another person, that if somebody did get sick, we could tell who they were next to and where they, where they had been on the job site at any given time, so that we wouldn't have to shut the whole job down, but we could contact the people that that person had been near and alert them. Thankfully, and knocking on wood, we haven't had any cases in our New York office. Our Virginia office, we've had a couple, and the protocols are different down there. But we've been very, very fortunate. The men and women on the job site really appreciate the precautions. They really appreciate being back to work, and we're thrilled that things are up and running again. We expect there's going to be a second wave, but we're doing everything we can to prepare and be as safe as possible.
Yeah, you mentioned the letdown factor. For me, that was the worst part. We had just taken more space. We had just hired more people. The beginning of Q1 of this year, I was a genius. We were going to be invincible this year. And then the oh shit moment came, and I rely on all you guys for business. I create nothing. I'm just a lawyer. It was a terrible feeling. Like, are we really going to not make it through this? Are these people really not going to have jobs? It was just really terrible. I hope I never forget that feeling. I really do, because it was so instructive, I think, on so many levels. And speaking of superheroes, Anne has always been one of my superheroes, but managing all of this and managing all those different school-age children and everything else, Anne, how you doing it? How are you doing it, right? What's going on?
Well, I think a lot of you know the history of my company. So for me to give context, I have to talk about what happened prior. So I lost my dad in October after a downward decline from congestive heart failure. So when I came, so that was October, then you had holidays, right, with November, December. We were shut down in December. We came back in January. And I think my company had been with me through the journey with my dad's declining health. And I think they were looking to me for whatever this new normal was going to be without my father in the building. So January, February, I feel like I was sort of gearing up and trying to sort of look at this new infrastructure and assure my employees that I was going to be okay and wear my Wonder Woman sweatshirt as opposed to the S. But so January and February was really like a foundational period for me emotionally to prove to my employees that we were going to get through this horrible loss of the founder of the company. So then come March with COVID, I hadn't yet established this new normal without my dad. And now suddenly we have COVID, which completely obliterated any normalcy, to our life. So I think, how did I get through it was the way I got through everything. I definitely bring leadership to my company. I don't think they ever doubted that I had a plan and a directive, and we were well informed, and my HR, team was amazing and delivering information. But there was a vulnerability that I think we all felt, no matter where you are on the corporate, echelon. And we were all equals. We were all worried. We were all concerned for one another. We were all worried about just the economics of Long Island, right? Not even to mention GSC in our own little world. But the stories we were hearing, that there's a lot of sharing and a lot of, it sounds straight, but there's a lot of intimacy in terms of conversations that was going on because people generally don't want to admit their vulnerability or their fears. But because of COVID, it sort of made us all have to talk about it, right? We were talking about earlier in the pre-meeting of this call, we were talking about mental health and the future of mental health. And I think, the ability to talk about our concerns as an employee, as a business owner, as a community, as a region, this is life-changing. And I think it was important to show vulnerability with leadership. And I think that's what Long Islanders were very good at. And of course, I have to bring up the daily calls with Cuomo that actually, right, those became a national thing for people, a national fixture for people to watch his daily calls. But that also was part of the culture of every day and the workforce sort of listening in to the latest in how Long Island was going to approach this. So, I thank you, Joe, for your comments. I wear my Wonder Woman sweatshirt and my symbol of trying to be a good leader. But I couldn't do it without, again, the amazing employees and the amazing leadership of this region. It really was amazing to be able to pick up a phone and call somebody for advice or just to talk. We really showed what makes us Long Island strong, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate your leadership. You know, for me, it wasn't easy because I was dealing not just with my own business, but as a business lawyer, all of my clients, right? And it was every day, all day, free fall. It was really, really rough, and I feel like we've leveled out a bit now, and we're sort of stabilizing. But boy, oh boy, those 6 weeks killed me. They really took a toll on me. Mark, how about you? How did you personally manage through this? Right? I think it's unique, and we all have our stories, and I want to hear your story.
One day at a time, I think, is how we did it. Stayed close to the team, tried to remain optimistic. It was really tough to see our supply chain here closed down and our operations in Scotland also shut down for several weeks in order to determine how they could deal with distancing and keeping employees safe. So we've had a number of issues compounding, like Ann, different set of issues, but I think like Yogi Berra said, when you're going through hell, keep on going. And that's the way we dealt with it.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I think as business leaders and business owners, we found ourselves in this weird position of, you know, health and safety has to always be paramount, of course, right? And we want to make sure that everybody's healthy and everybody's safe. But we also wanted to save our businesses. Like we didn't want to lose our businesses either and our livelihoods, because that's another side of it. And for me personally, I felt like I was constantly weighing, so two things that shouldn't be weighed. Like, okay, are we safe? But we got to be profitable. What are we doing? It was really a tough thing to gauge for me. Mark, did you feel that way at times as well?
Every day. Thinking about what's important and thinking about employee safety as being, of paramount importance. Businesses can go through difficult years, and luckily we had the support of our parent company in Scotland, who understood quite well the issues that we were dealing with here. But we have, as many of these businesses have, longtime employees, people who've dedicated much of their adult lives to this business. So that was sort of the most personally difficult element for me.
Yeah, for me, it's like the business was a person. It's an entity almost, right? And you feel like if that died, then that was another casualty that happened. Jeff, how were you able to? You look very relaxed and very very stress free. How were you able to get through this to this point 6 months later, personally?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with the team. I mean, this was probably the most stressful, highest level of anxiety I've ever had in my career ever, working through it. I mean, I ended up right after Easter, I think it was, I had to go run one of our buildings because of certain people that were home and not able to come in. So I worked out of a conference room for 6 weeks. It was stressful. I mean, I think, I put in the hours here because I think it was very important for the team to see that, the leaders are involved and we want to make this happen, rolling up our sleeves, whatever it was. One day I came in and the temp person who took the temperature was unable to come in. So I went and gowned up, got a thermometer, and I was taking temperatures for people to come in. I think we do what we have to do. On the other side, it was really kind of, my home is my sanity, and spending that time with my children and being able to kind of hold them, knowing that they were safe, for me was kind of that stress relief I needed at the end of the day. So I needed to make sure that was still built in. I wanted to be here 24 hours a day in the office, but I needed that other side of it to kind of, understand what are we going for here? What are we trying to work towards? So it was, if I look calm, it was definitely not the same. The stress level was through the roof. I know my wife would even say when I would come home, After a day, she'd say, wow, I've never seen you this stressed. And then the next day was even more. But being surrounded by an awesome team, having the ability to reach out to fellow colleagues in the industry or in the park even. There was several forums that I was involved in where we were sharing information real time. This was new for everyone. There was no playbook. There was no set way to do the right thing. What is the right thing? So everyone was kind of bouncing ideas off each other. Hey, does this work? Or, you know, what are new opportunities to keep people moving through the facilities? So, I mean, I think having that partnership and kind of the family atmosphere that we've created here and everyone kind of stepping up, that to me was kind of the saving grace for me in terms of getting up every day and pushing through it, to know that there was going to be, you know, this kind of light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, it must have been very stressful, but you guys did a really terrific job. Really, you all should be proud. You know, for me, I tripled the size of my wine cellar at home. That's kind of how I got through this. On a win-win basis. So let's talk about industry shifts now. Mark, I'll start with you. So, you know, we're seeing all these new things come into the marketplace now. Zoom, which I hate because I never have to look at myself, and now I've looked at myself so much, and I'm so sorry that this is what you guys have to see all the time when you're talking to me. I can't stand looking at myself, but it's become very handy, I think, for things like this. But Mark, in your industry, you know, the shift, the COVID shift, the implementing technology, the different measures you've had to take long term, where do you see your industry going and shifting?
Well, speaking for our business, there have been very considerable shifts over the course of the last 6 months, one of which is in-person meetings with customers have morphed into these Zoom calls. So it will be interesting to see how that sticks moving forward. One of the ways that the Walker's business has been built, both in the US and globally, is through participation in trade shows, both in the US and in Europe largely. So all of those shows have been canceled this year, and our team has been very innovative at finding ways to sort of create an online version of those shows and interact with customers in that way. So I wonder what the future will hold for our participation and the industry's participation in those sorts of in-person shows, and even the nature of business travel, which I think will change pretty dramatically.
Yeah, trade shows are a tough one. You hear at HIA-LI, it's always been sort of the cornerstone of our year, our trade show, the largest here on the island. And, you know, here we are trying to figure out how do you do that virtually. And for me, trade shows, I hope they come back. They were always so important to industries, so important to just get those breakout sessions where you connect with somebody and you're able to kick over into the bar and have a cocktail and continue the conversation. Really hope that we see that come back. Jeff, for you, how has this impacted your industry, your company, and where do you see long-term those shifts sticking?
A tremendous amount of impact. I think it kind of catapulted us into the future, maybe where we were headed down the road in terms of a lot of the virtual opportunities. The work from home, I can see a lot of that sticking for certain departments. It's been very effective. People have found it somewhat even more effective than sometimes being in the office. Some people like being in the office. So I think the work from home is going to continue. The travel definitely was an impact. We do attend a lot of trade shows. I think we're going to see some of those go virtual. The benefit on our side, there was limited travel. So I'm sure a lot of companies did see some more dollars staying behind because travel was basically halted since March. It does hurt though, because we are a very transparent company to our partners. So we're a contract manufacturer, meaning everything we produce, it's for our partners. So having our partners on site is a big part of what we do. Having them see the facilities where their products are being produced, walking the lines is a big part of that. So that did hurt in the beginning, putting that on hold. People obviously understood it. We did put together some videos for key partners, just kind of doing a walkthrough of the facilities, what's happening. I think it's focusing on what we went through is focusing our energy now to look at even newer levels of technology There are still certain areas within our business that are very manual. And maybe that's an opportunity now to find out, all right, is there a new piece of equipment out there that helps support so we can kind of disperse or spread out the labor in different opportunities across the buildings. So it definitely showed us how vulnerable we could be, but also kind of, I think, opened us up to start looking to the future. We've been doing the Microsoft Teams in the office. So limited office face-to-face meetings, but these team meetings or the Zooms have definitely been helpful. It actually, I think, pushed to having even more of these types of virtual meetings with our customers. In the past, it's usually been phone calls, but now that I think it's more commonplace to use these virtual meetings with the video, I feel that that's definitely something that's going to stick around for sure. And then even just the market itself. I mean, we're making more vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc than ever. People need the product. So we're producing as much as we can, looking for efficiencies everywhere we can, and listening to the team in terms of things that we can do to bring to light these efficiencies.
I think when I toured your facility, Mark was saying you guys produce like a billion packets of hangover relief. That must be doing really well right now in COVID. Your hangover supplements.
Yeah, we got to cover. I think a lot of people like you join the wine cellar list in terms of adding on their favorite cocktails. But yeah, I mean the people right now are looking for products. We want to make sure they're there on the shelf for people when they go to look for them. Obviously, in the beginning, there was this big craze and shelves were depleted of products and people were over purchasing. So we tried to manage that as best we can by, in the beginning, trying to get orders in the system. We are still dealing with some COVID-related delays from now our partners and our vendors, and we are trying to manage that. So we have team meetings, whether it's country specific where we're buying materials, product specific, looking long-term in terms of the forecasting. So trying to be as proactive as we can to make sure the products that we're producing, we're continuing to bring in so there's no shortage.
Yeah, it's funny because as a lawyer, all I sell is time. And what I realized is how much time we're actually wasting as a business community pre-COVID. And I think, we've been waiting for the video conferencing industry to take off for years and years and years. And I think it's just going to help save a lot of time going forward now that it's sort of stuck with the business community. And for you, so what long-term shifts in your industry do you see coming out of this?
Well, I think you say long-term. Short-term, obviously I echo a lot of what Jeff said, being manufacturers and such. But I will say that short-term, we have suffered by not being able to travel, right? So we haven't been on the business development side, right? I'm not flying out to St. Louis to talk to Boeing. I'm not flying out to Lockheed. I'm not flying out to the other OEMs. And on the other side of that, we're also not going to visit our supply chain companies. So we have a strong supply chain in California right now where typically my team would be flying out there to do surveillance and updates and everything. So that's a concern that we haven't been able, because still it's hands-on, right? We still make product. You have to go hands-on, meet people, look at the product, make sure they did the tooling. But that being said, the use of virtual meetings, like Jeff said, it's becoming part of the new normal. Even though I much prefer in-person meetings, this is definitely what saved us actually in being able to talk to vendors and make sure that they were still open and working on our parts. So that's where I think long-term it's going to be, and to your point, Joe, it's much more efficient. There's a lot of efficiencies that can be done by doing meetings this way. Not to say that we won't travel, but probably decrease the amount of travel based on that. So looking for the right efficiencies, I think, is important in this, but it's still hard. I mean, it's still hard to predict the impact of this. I'm still very concerned about the next 3 or 4 months they're going to bring to us. So.
Yeah, these are going to be critical months now. I watch and hold my breath every day with the schools, but with travel, for you guys, especially the manufacturers on the panel, travel and trade shows are so important. you know, is it a sense that once this sort of all clears away and we have a vaccine and it's gone, you guys see yourselves going back to the same routine you had? Or do you think that it's changed for good, that these virtual trade shows are going to be where it's at, or you see them as temporary? I'm curious how you guys see that.
I think, to use a school term, I think it'll be hybrid, right? I think you're going to pull a little bit of the COVID era into it and where you find efficiencies with it. And then I think there's an eagerness to return to some aspect of that trade show and business development activities that went on prior to COVID. So, you know, again, I hope we pull the good from both of these and make it better for the future. But relationships are so important in our industry. I mean, you really have to really work on those relationships. It's hard to get on a screen with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, for you, Mark, a couple of years ago, I went to a food show at the Javits Center, which was absolutely incredible. The booths were incredible. The samples were even better. Can't have a food show virtually necessarily with tasting. So do you think your industry is just going to get right back on planes and be out traveling again?
I agree with that. I think it's going to be a hybrid situation. So just open sampling, I think we won't see the likes of that again for some time. So sampling in prepackaged portion packs more likely to take place. But you know, the human touch and face-to-face still clearly a role for that. But I do think that Zoom and Microsoft Teams have changed the world to some degree, and we'll see more of that moving forward.
Yeah, Jeff, same in your industry, you think?
Yeah, exactly the same. There's definitely some pieces, like you said, you know, attending that food show. I mean, we have some equipment shows that, you know, getting to the equipment show and seeing everything on the floor and how it works definitely adds value. But to piggyback on Ann's comment, I think it's going to be a hybrid moving forward. I think it's going to be a slow opportunity to bring it back, though. I don't see it kind of coming back short term. I think it's going to take a little bit longer for sure to see a full-fledged trade show like we're used to. I had one that I was supposed to attend. It was actually going to be end of March. It was micronutrient forum we do some pregnancy and prenatal type products in Thailand. It got postponed. It was going to be in November, and now they just announced it's going to be just a virtual conference, and they're looking at ways to make a virtual trade show. So I'm really interested to see how they bring technology to this, where I don't know if they're going to be doing any virtual reality type opportunities where they could send glasses to the participants, but they're going to try to make it feel like you're at a trade show. So I'm interested to see what technology does to kind of help, you know, keep things progressing forward. But I don't think we'll be walking a trade show this year.
Yeah, you know, I'm a real people person. I'm a real in-person guy. I want to shake someone's hand. I want to give them a hug. I want to get to know them and spend time with them. I've been resisting this Zoom for forever, but it's what saved us. I mean, somebody mentioned it, and it's what saved us, because you can only conference call so much. Jim, for you, so from a development perspective, right, you have to be on site. Investors have to be hands-on and see what's going on. How are you managing the balance with technology and Zoom and in-person meetings?
Well, I mean, we haven't had a lot of in-person meetings for the development side. Obviously, construction is an on-site thing; it has to happen. But for new projects, it has been relatively remote. You know, although that being said, I mean, I spent Friday renting a plane to go to Virginia to meet some investors who were recapitalizing a 6 million square foot project that we have down there. So these people, it was all private planes though. Nobody was flying commercial. You know, in my group, I'm not going to say who, but we have people that are health compromised that probably don't want to get on a commercial plane, and so we met 7 people in Virginia on Friday. 2 from San Francisco, 1 from Chicago, 1 from New York, and then our group. And they had to see the property, right? They had, we had many virtual meetings with them, and we'd gone through all kinds of numbers and legal and all that stuff to get to a point for them to pull the trigger. Obviously every one of our projects is like a company in and of itself, right? So a 6 million square foot project is hundreds of millions of dollars. And so it's something that you're recapitalizing a big project. They eventually have to go see it. So we did that on Friday. That was the first one I've been part of, but it's also the first one that we're actually trying to get to a closing in the COVID environment. We have several others that are ongoing here on the island, in fact, and it's a little easier because most of the money people are in and around New York, so they'll just drive out to Long Island and take a look at the job sites or the potential job sites. But I think, COVID in general in our industry has just accelerated a lot of trends that were already happening. Retail is not coming back the way retail was. I mean, it's just not going to be the same, but it was already heading that way. I mean, e-commerce was already driving it down. Malls were zombies already. They were just dead men walking, and now they need to be repurposed quicker. You saw today in Newsday that there's a mall on the South Shore that Northwell just took and is going to put in a new 35,000 square foot multi-specialty clinic. You're going to see a lot of that where medical is going to do well. You're going to see more essential services in retail, grocers, pharmacy, things that are not subject to being shut down. But eventually you're going to see a comeback of entertainment because we do all want to be together. We want to go out to a restaurant. We want to eventually go to a movie or a music venue. And that will come back. I'm not sure when. The hospitality industry is absolutely been crushed, but there's people right now, and this is true of all real estate product types, that there's a dislocation between what money thinks the COVID discount should be and what the owners or sellers think that they have to give up in order to get their projects or assets refinanced. And hotel is probably the most elastic of that right now. It's been absolutely crushed. But when, as you guys all say, the hybrid model comes back, they'll quickly rebound. So there's a lot of people right now that think there's like a 9-month window to go buy hotels. And so money is being raised. There's tons of money in the market is the other thing. Very different than the 08 to 2011, 2013 model where the banks were hurting and there was not enough capital in the markets. There is more capital than they can put to use right now. So it's trying to find that story. It's trying to find that yield where they can tell their investor group, we're getting a bang out of this COVID discount, or we're buying this cheap because of COVID for this reason. And that has created a dislocation between, the demand for money and the supply of money, but it is starting to match up, like the group I met on Friday. We've met up and we're going to be refinancing a very large project together. And we're starting to see that in the multifamily. We've always seen it in the multifamily side, but we're actually seeing that they're actually willing to put the money out. And a lot of the capital markets are starting to see that, if there's just nowhere else to get yield right now. I mean, you can't buy a bond anymore. I mean, there's no way that you're going to get any yield out of a bond. You're not going to get any. Stocks are great, but there are, obviously a lot of people aren't sure where the future of that is. And real estate, especially multifamily real estate, is a very dependable income stream, and it provides a very good yield. So that asset class is especially suburban multifamily is attracting tons of capital right now. So and then the other side is industrial. Obviously, we're all members of an industrial park, right? In the Hauppauge Innovation Park, and whether it's new forms, a lot of our industrial is obsolete. A lot of our industrial was made for guys in onesie suits, all greased up, and now it's more of a technology or a pharmaceutical related space requirement, and of course logistics. And Long Island is woefully underserved in the logistics space. And I know the old Newsday site is going to become about 800,000 feet of logistics space from Harts Mountain. There's a couple other sites that are in play for that. But we need, for a almost 3 million person market, we need a lot more logistics space. So logistics and multifamily can get all the money they need right now. But retail, even office, I mean, people don't know, right? You're going to need more square foot per person, but you don't know how many people actually have to be back in the office versus working remotely. So there's sort of a push me pull you on the demand for office space right now. That's really going to be an unknown how that shakes out. But there's some capital willing to dip their toe into that marketplace. So the back end of this, I'm not sure, but it's not horrible in the interim right now, unless you own a lot of retail.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about, there being a lot of capital, and you can accomplish so much virtually, but people just aren't going to write big checks unless they can meet you, right? We all rely on our instincts. We all rely on our vibes that we get from people when it feels right. And let's face it, your investors, a Boeing, a Starbucks, they're just not going to give out huge contracts unless they're going to spend some time with you, unless they get to know you and your company and your culture and things like that. I want to talk about culture a little bit. So if we were having this discussion in February, right, we would be saying that it's an experience economy, and millennials are ruling the world, and they need culture in order to come to a workplace. And nobody's talking about any of that shit anymore, right? We're just talking about survival and stuff. But Jeff, I'll start with you. So how have you sort of tried to maintain some culture? What's that like? It's totally different for us. I'm curious how you guys have maintained that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, our culture here is one of the most important things and probably one of the keys to our success at CPC. We are a family company, a second generation, and that family culture is something that we really pride ourselves on. When we're interviewing, obviously there's experience, there's your background, but having the fit within this teamwork environment is so critical. So I think it actually almost helped solidify this family culture. Everyone cared about one another. I was on phone calls daily during March, April, May with team members that were homesick or family members checking in on everyone. So I think it really just showed how much we really do care about one another here within the office, in this office space. So to me, I think it just kind of, like I said, solidified that culture that we have here, that we're all in this together. If someone can't come in, someone else is stepping up from different departments. We had a ton of people just really kind of help out in time of need. And that's across all levels, not just, at the top, but across all levels, stepping up and helping each other. The culture that you create at your organization is one of the most important things. And that carries through. When we were a lot smaller, a family culture is different. So when I started 12 years ago, we were about 200 people. Today, we're 1,300 people. So it's a very different feel, and it's hard to kind of keep it, but it's amazing that we do have it. And like I said, I was making phone calls to porters, to line operators, to directors during COVID, checking in on families and whatnot. And for me and for everyone else I could speak, it was genuine. It's not just something that we felt we had to do. We actually do care. So that to me, I think makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's great. I struggle always trying to find ways to keep 50 people together. I can't imagine 1,300 people. It's absolutely incredible. Mark, with Walkers, so talk about the culture that's there. It's interesting because I know, is it the parent company that's in Scotland? I was looking you guys up over in your home in Scotland, and what's the culture you have here, and how have you maintained it during COVID and things?
Well, like CPC, Walkers is a family business, fourth generation family business, and culture is particularly important. And Scottish culture really pervades the organization. So that's a critical factor here. And part of being a family business is that there's that family element of things, and we have many long-term employees who know each other and care about each other and have been through thick and thin together. So that certainly helps keep things together in this sort of an environment. I do have a question, though, which, and I don't know if this is an appropriate time to raise it, but I just want to comment on something or question something that Jim talked about in terms of logistics on the island and in the industrial park. I wonder what people on the panel think about the whole subject of the cross Long Island Sound crossing projects that have been on again, off again for many years. And even as recently as 2018, I know Governor Cuomo supported that, but it sort of dissolved under a lot of local opposition. You know, as I think about opportunities for increased warehousing and logistics and manufacturing, particularly in Suffolk County, I am a big supporter of trying to reinvigorate that project. There's been a lot of talk about infrastructure projects in the US and certainly in the New York area. And we know that there's a big one, you know, the Hudson River crossing tunnel that was torpedoed a couple of years ago because of cost. But it's hard to think of a project for Long Island that could be more impactful on the economy of the industrial park and all of Suffolk County in particular. Do businesses in the area support that project?
You guys want to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, I could weigh in. I mean, I would be very supportive of that project. It's not going through my neighborhood though, so I think that's the hard part about Long Island is that, you know, we are very fractured decision making, particularly with respect to any kind of and we look at the third track, you know, for the LIRR, which 20 years in the making is finally, you know, finally getting funded, and it's because of seven crossings and a couple of small communities who were going to have some eminent domain and a lot of construction disruption, you know, for a 2-year period. And, you know, that is very small impact compared to what the crossing would be, right? Both from an environmental standpoint, as well as a property taking standpoint and a sort of, for lack of a better word, traffic pattern change. Like if you threw, you know, major amounts of traffic right up through some North Shore community that probably, you know, got a lot of pretty wealthy people in it, and they are pretty politically connected, and they can, you know, they can fight it at every governmental level, right? The village level, the town level, the county level, the state level, and in this case, even the federal level, right? To stop the project. So, you know, I always joke, I mean, like the project I referenced in Virginia, you know, we had a 4-leaf clover interchange built off of a major 6-lane highway. We had 2 service roads and 2 bridge crossings built, 2.5 million gallons of sewer brought in, 2 electric substations built, and all kinds of fiber being brought through it. And I said, my grandkids would talk about that on Long Island. I mean, it would imagine getting a 4-leaf clover interchange built on the LIE, and what it would take politically and legally and permit wise to get that done. It, you know, only took us 10 years in Virginia, but it's lightning speed compared to what it would take in Long Island. And in Virginia, they have 1 county. They have 9 votes. There's 9 supervisors. There's no layers of government. There's no village. There's no town. If you can count to 5 votes, your project wins. Here, you have that same thing, but on a labyrinth of approvals just to get a building built. Never mind build, you know, a bridge across the Sound. So I think our fragmented government structure is the biggest impediment to making something. It would take a Cuomo, you know, to really stand up and say, I don't care. I'm funding it. I'm doing the eminent domain at the state level. I'm getting this done. And I think barring him stepping up and doing that, I can't imagine how it could happen. And he would have to be willing to take all the political, you know, slings and arrows for doing that. But it would take that, I think, for it to happen.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that as well. And I want to touch on something that you mentioned before. You know, I was very sorry when I had learned that your dad had passed. He was a giant here and a giant in the HIA, and I'm glad that we got to honor him before that. So you must have you mentioned sort of this roller coaster. You were coming into the company under one set of difficult circumstances. It then went and got even more difficult. And so how were you able to sort of, you know, hold that culture together, and where do you see that sort of going in the future now as this continues to stabilize? That you feel you've been able to do a good job holding it together?
I think we have been. I think, Mark, you commented, you know, 1 day at a time is how you got through it. And that's exactly how we had to do it. You know, every morning you make sure that no messages had come in that someone was sick. And, you know, and actually from a technology point of view, I've never had all of my employees' cell numbers in my phone, right? This adds like a new HR like, God bless all the HR managers who are going through this entire experience too, because there was a personalization that went on more than normal. So I was texting my employees and assuring them of, you know, different things, or if they just wanted to touch base. And but I think, you know, in terms of keeping, it's interesting, we're all family businesses here, which is cheers to family businesses. Yep. And the continuity there. But I think the character and the culture of companies is what makes a successful company, and being able to maintain that culture. Character is a big one, and character is what really shone through for companies that made it through this. But circling back to the future, again, I gotta tip my hat to HR, all those human resources folks out there who suddenly are going to be interviewing people who, I think the question is going to be, can I work from home any of the days? Right? I think that's going to now be part of the interviewing process to see if that's part of our package. You know, is there any remote capability in the jobs that we're hiring for? And I just think the whole job description aspect of what we do is going to change. So, I mean, I feel hopeful. I'm glad, again, that there's resources out there. But as far as personalizing it, Joe, thank you for your comments about my dad. But I think, you know, we're going to get back on track in terms of business development. Part of survival through COVID, I mentioned earlier, is knowing what markets or pre-COVID and post-COVID, is knowing what markets we can expand into. In order to survive on Long Island, as you all know, you have to be niche-y and you have to be incredibly superior to your peers who are working in lower cost regions of the nation. So we have our challenges, but we also have unbelievable talent. And I'd be remiss if I did not talk more about workforce. We have to continue to focus on workforce as well as infrastructure. You know, the human capital of Long Island is important, and it cannot be forgotten that we have to continue to foster training and workforce and make sure we maintain that pipeline for new markets. I mean, you want to talk about more projects too. You got the UAV market who sees Calverton and runways and airspace out there. You know, there's a way to build defense even more in this area. There's the wind industry that we're looking at, you know, and trying to build infrastructure there with wind. But again, we're resilient, right? This manufacturing community is very resilient. And I think the strength that you have on the screen tells you, I think we do represent the culture of Long Island. I think we are rich with family businesses. I think we are rich with passion, and we are rich with very dedicated, passionate, skilled workforce. So I feel positive. I have to feel positive. You know, every Monday morning I would pray that we would get to Friday evening, right? That's really, I mean, it was day to day and then Monday to Friday. That's all I prayed for. Every Monday morning, I just hoped that our doors were still open on Friday night. So I think that's important and a true testament. So again, to all you family businesses, well done. And that's the culture and character that's going to get us moving forward.
Yep, there is a very distinct culture in family businesses of trying to build that family. And you mentioned the cell phones. You know, I can remember March and April just incessantly texting everybody to make sure they were okay, because you don't know what else to do, right? And you just want to make sure that that people are okay. My employees are probably like, this guy's a nut job, I'm fine, but for me, I didn't feel comfortable unless I knew they were okay, because you're not seeing them. You're not seeing them, you're not hearing them. It was very difficult. So we have just a couple of minutes left. I want to just go around and hear from you guys about what you see for the future and what, you know, where you think we're headed. And I want everybody to try and end optimistically, please, so that we can all leave here feeling good. But Mark, I'll start with you and we'll go around.
Well, I'm looking forward to one of the many vaccines that are in development, or several of them beginning to be prepared for application in the US and across the world, and much more of a return to whatever the new normal will be. So I don't think it will be quite as it was, but I think clearly people will be getting out again and things will be opening up in a safer way. That will create new opportunities and new challenges for all of our businesses and for all businesses in the area. You know, one thing to say is that I've been really impressed with the level of innovation that I've seen during the past 6 months. As businesses have been challenged, many of them have stepped up to the challenge and have innovated their offerings and have done outdoor seating and have done various things to adapt. And I think that we're all in a state where adapting to the environment is going to be essential.
Yep. Jeff?
I'm kind of excited. I think moving forward to be definitely positive. I think the technology piece. I think I mentioned before. I think we catapulted into kind of this future with the Zoom technology and everything else. Business is definitely there. People are educated in terms of the products that are being produced specifically by us. Looking back also, I will say, obviously, as stressful as it was from the business side, I think it slowed everything down from a family atmosphere. My two girls are dancers. My son is in every sport there is. All that slowed down. And I felt like there was a lot of time with them that really wasn't there before. And, I hope people were able to see some of those positive things during, this slowdown of our world during COVID. There was definitely moments, and I got these pictures that I'll cherish forever, and on the beach with them, and time that I had with them. So to me, that was just spectacular. But from a business perspective, we're actively hiring right now. We're looking to add to the team. We're recruiting across all shifts. The business piece, we're looking at the new technologies, like I mentioned. We're always looking to drive efficiencies where we can. So I think, together, one, the HIA community, but also us as New Yorkers, and then even bigger as Americans, we're going to get through this. Everyone comes together, but we also grow from opportunities like this. So I'm looking forward to kind of the next phase and putting this behind us.
Yep. And your thoughts?
I'm just hoping that we don't get complacent. There's a lot of things that we learned from this, and when it's right at the front of our thought, we all have great ideas about efficiencies and things to put in place and great initiatives that we should be doing. So I guess I feel positive. I just hope, again, that we don't get complacent, that we don't fall back into some things that we were doing. In terms of driving initiatives forward, you mentioned, Joe, that you sell time as a profession, which is valuable in its own right, but we do make stuff. Long Island makes great products. And I've told many people, how passionate I am. I said, if we can't be successful as a manufacturing community now, after proving how resilient, how responsive, and again, just the folks on the screen, we continue to make products and ship it out of New York, right? We held the economy together, and I really feel strongly about that, and I don't think that is said enough. So I hope that when people reflect back on this period, we made a lot of great stuff during COVID, and we really need to foster that, be proud of it, reinstate that pride that we used to have, that Grumman pride that everyone talks about way back when. We should have manufacturing pride. We make great stuff on Long Island, and we make great people. So I think the takeaway from this should be really marketing that as our asset for Long Island. We really need to not forget that we came through for the people of Long Island, and we came through for people outside of Long Island in delivering our products to them. So that's the big takeaway is let's not be complacent. Let's learn from it and be proud of who we are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And certainly you got a strong advocate in me and HIA-LI. When I talk to people, I remind them that in New York, we were the Omaha Beach in Normandy of COVID. Okay, we got hit like nobody's business, and nobody knew anything. And you guys all tremendously stepped up. The healthcare workers stepped up, and every other state got the benefit of that data, got the benefit of that experience, but you guys held that first wave so incredibly well. I'm in awe with it, right? Lawyers, we all hid in our houses and worked remotely. You guys had to be in the trenches getting stuff done, and you did it remarkably well. And there can be no better marketing slogan for New York and Long Island than that. Trust me, that's going to go a long way. And you know me, I like to promote things, so I'm schooling your corner on that one. Jim?
Yeah, so no, we're incredibly optimistic. Obviously, we don't build things that we can ship off of Long Island, but everything that we build brings a lot of dollars to Long Island, and we're trying to be responsive to the need to really change the built environment to allow manufacturers and to allow technology companies to really be able to attract the workforce that we need and keep the workforce that we need here. So, our job is to bring money from off the island to the island and to try to create those built environments that are going to allow these jobs to be created and sustained. And we're super, super optimistic about it. I think even a second wave is not going to damper the availability of our ability to get our project in Ronkonkoma, Bayshore, and the new project that we're about to pursue in the innovation park for a mixed use project at 49 Wireless. So we're super optimistic, and you can. There's no way that you can see Long Island getting defeated by this, especially hearing what I've heard here today and watch what all y'all have done throughout this pandemic. So thanks to all of you, and keep going. I'll try to build something where people want to live.
Yeah, I mean, I totally share all of the optimism and all of everybody's hard work. I think now that businesses are stabilizing, and COVID accelerated a lot of things that were likely going to happen in retail anyway, things like that. But what we need to focus on, I think all of us on Long Island, is bringing our culture back, bringing our restaurants back, bringing our hospitality back, bringing our live arts back. That's something that makes this place a really great place to live, in addition to work. And I think that's the next logical step for us. Tony Joy, I see that you are giving us the hook here. That's the virtual hook. But wow, how fast an hour and a half went with these people, huh? Really great stuff.
It did. Awesome. Thank you, Joe, so much for moderating this morning. And thank you to all of our wonderful panelists that we have. It was really inspiring just to hear about the unique ways that you've pivoted, how to restructure, adapt to everything that's been going on. So we just, again, want to thank you so much for sharing that with everyone today. Quickly, just to close, we wanted to invite many of you to some of our other upcoming programs that we have. Next week, we have a little bit more about the Long Island Innovation Park at HOPOG. You'll hear some critical updates, as well as just some information that you'll want to hear if you do work in the park or are in the park. It would be great for you to join us next week. We also have a Small Business Task Force open forum, talking a little bit about the evolving workplace of 2021. So I know we touched a little bit about that today, as far as some remote workers and things along those lines. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into that kind of conversation. And then we do also have coming up, we have our virtual Business Achievement Awards, where we'll be celebrating the excellence of Long Island business. We have 20 wonderful finalists, and we have 6 recipients who we will be very excited to showcase and discuss with you at that point. And then I know we spoke about our virtual trade show that is coming up. So also very exciting on October 7th and 8th. So it'll be 2 days virtual. A lot of great things going on. If you have any questions or want more information, please feel free to reach out to any one of us over at the HIA-LI. We look forward to having you all join us for some of these upcoming programs. And again, thank you to Joe and our panelists for this morning. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Great, thanks everyone.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.